Okay, in this pre-lab video, what we're going to do is take a look at our first lab of the year, which is our sink or float lab, and kind of how we're going to prep for that today and going into our lab tomorrow. Okay, so first thing we want to do is take a look at kind of like what is our objective of this lab and kind of what we're doing. So the idea is, do bowling balls sink or do they float? Okay, so I'm sure in your head right now you're like, oh, they do this. Okay, so maybe you have some background with it. Maybe you have some knowledge on bowling balls. Who knows? But the idea of do they sink or float may be kind of foreign to you. It's like I've never really figured that out before. So that's what our lab is going to do today. We're going to use the concept of density, okay, and that relationship between mass and volume to figure out how a bowling ball will sink or float in everyday water. Okay, so here's what we got going on. You're going to have to do some density mathematically. You're going to have to think about it conceptually, and you're going to have to think about it through modeling to determine if your ball is going to sink or float. Okay, so that's how we're going to be kind of doing all three of those things as we go through our lab today in some way, shape, or form. Okay, so we have a pre-lab we have to do with this. And the pre-lab is basically the steps you take before you come back tomorrow. So when you come in the room tomorrow with minimal instruction, you will begin working on your lab and start doing your measurements and your stuff right away. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. So first thing you want to do, number one, you want to determine what measurements you're going to take, what values you need, and the formulas you're going to use to predict if your bowling ball will sink or float. Okay, so someplace either in Notability or on a piece of paper, start listing out, okay, these are the measurements I want to take, this is the formula I'm going to use, these are the values I need to look up, those kind of things. Okay. Now, you'll identify that kind of in a pre-lab sheet. Again, it can just be on Notability or on a piece of paper. Either way works. And now, what do you have access to? So you might be going like, well, wait a minute. I need to, what do I get to do this lab? Okay, so here's how it works. Let me show you. Say you're on a boat, okay, and you have equipment for that. So if you're on a boat, and it's a fishing boats always have some sort of measuring tool that allows you to measure how long the fish are that you are catching. So you'd have a measuring tool like this, a meter stick, okay? And because you are a scientist, you would definitely be using the centimeters and meter side. You would ignore this side. I think these are called inches or inches or something. I'm not really sure. There's really only one country in the world that still uses these, but it's kind of weird. So, but the rest of the world, including us, use centimeters and meters, so that's what we've been using today for sure. So you have a meter stick. Anytime you're on a boat of some sort, you have access to string, rope, fishing line, something like that. So you're definitely going to have access to something like that. If you're a fisherman, you know that you always want to take a weight of your fish, so you're going to have access to it actually, which is actually a fish scale. Okay, you're going to want to make sure that the unit on it is set to something that we can understand. So these are lbs. I'm not sure what lbs stand for. It's like lubs or something. I'm not sure. So we want to turn this unit to something that there's OZs. I'm not sure if those are either. Oh, kilograms. So kilograms is the mass that we the whole world uses. So we want to make sure that we're in kilograms as we take a look at our scale. You can hit the unit button to do that. And then I want to be able to like use a scale and maybe attach it to a bowling ball or do something. So of course, all good boats have a bucket of some sort with them too. So that bucket has a handle on it. So in theory, if somebody wanted to, they could hook the scale to the bucket, and then potentially anything inside the bucket they could figure out the mass of. Okay, so these are the things you have access to. You have a scale, you have some string, you have a bucket, you have a measuring tool for lengths, and obviously you have your favorite bowling ball with you for some reason on your fishing boat. I don't know why you do, but you do. Okay, so you have access to your bowling ball also in terms of it. Now the only thing that you're not allowed to have or you don't have access to is a whole big tub of water. Okay, because you don't want to drop your bowling ball into the water and it might sink away and be gone forever. Okay, so the one thing you can't do procedurally is actually put the bowling ball, submerge it in water as part of your testing. Okay, so we're going to leave that to after you decide whether or not it sinks or floats. Let's talk about what you're going to do for the pre-lab. Okay, the biggest thing we need to do is I need you to prep your procedure. Okay, so what steps are you going to take to measure the ball to do the calculations to find the density of that ball, to be able to compare it to the density of water, and then do a comparison of those two to show whether or not that ball is going to sink or going to float. Okay. Knowing that, you probably need to know the density of water too, so that might be something you have to look up. Okay. Procedures are step by step, so they should be numbered. Step 1 is this, step 2 is this, step 3 is this, step 4 is this. They should be concise, but they should explain every step in details. Okay. They're not flowing paragraphs by no means. All right. So you'll write up your procedure. In addition, I would definitely identify the equation and have the mathematical equations ready to work with, and potentially any units of conversion you might need, because the density of the water that you look up or find online might not be the same units of measurement that you did in the lab. So maybe you find things in grams, but you measured in kilograms. So how do you convert between those two units? That kind of stuff, to figure those things out. Okay. Yeah. So when you come back to class tomorrow, you will have that procedure written. You will have a plan in place. You need one per your group of your partnerships to have that done. And then what's going to happen in lab tomorrow is you're going to show me the pre-lab. Say, here's our plan. I'll say, yep, you're good. Go start measuring. And then you'll go to your lab station. You'll start measuring. You'll do your measurements. You will do your calculations. And then you will come up with a hypothesis. Okay. And the hypothesis has to be about your calculations and your bowling ball. Okay. I do not want the hypothesis to say, if a ball is this, then it's going to do that. Okay. The if-then statement is amazing, great. But in this case, we have a very specific hypothesis. So a hypothesis should be worded more along this format. Our bowling ball will sink or float. Okay. So make a statement. Tell me what it's going to do. Our bowling ball will this. And then here's the most important part of a hypothesis. Because. Okay. Our bowling ball will sink because of this reason. Our bowling ball will float because of this reason. Okay. That's a quality hypothesis. Okay. And in there. Okay. Now, if you want to use an if-then statement because you just have been ingrained in your lives, you have to say if-then in hypothesis. You can say, if I place it in water, then our bowling ball will sink or float because of this reason. Okay. We are going to place it in water. Okay. So it's going to happen. It's about our ball. Right. So hopefully you guys got that. Yeah. Once you have your measurements done, you will come back to a location in the lab where I do have a big tub of water. You will explain your hypothesis to me. We'll talk about it, see if it's a quality hypothesis. I'll double check your math, and then we will test to see if you are correct about your ball sinking or floating. That's the plan. Okay. This is something that should be accomplishable in about 30 minutes in terms of measuring, calculating, and testing. Okay. Especially considering that we have about half a day beforehand pre-labbing and preparing for what we're going to be doing. All right. Let's go do lab. Thanks.